Good morning. It's good to be together in this new way. I hope that you're finding a new rhythm for your lives, that your days have some balance between staying indoors and also enjoying the beauty of spring. As we prepare to enter a spirit of worship, I invite you to take a moment to prepare a candle or a chalice that you can light where we light our community chalice. Some of the music Corey will play this morning is familiar. Hum, sing, dance, whatever helps you feel grounded and connected with our scattered community. This is a challenging time for all of us. Our board is concerned not only about the spiritual and emotional welfare of the members and friends of our community, but also about the fiscal well-being of the fellowship and our employees during this challenge in our world. Please, if it is within your capability, send your pledge checks and donation by mail. And I also want to hold up two other ways that we can contribute to the welfare of our community, our larger Clemson area community. Please remember Clemson Community Care. They're already putting out announcements that the demands for their services, especially for food, are increasing daily as more and more people lose their jobs. You can send checks or take canned goods by Clemson Community Care. And to the best of your ability, support our local businesses, especially restaurants and other places. And if it's within your means, tip generously. Many, many people have lost all their financial support. Next week, our topic is digital wisdom, a fascinating subject, and I have so enjoyed talking with Gabe Hankins about this topic. Gabe Hankins, assistant professor of English at Clemson, will speak to us about his research and insights on the wisdom found in our digital age. And Gabe Hankins has generously agreed to help put together a phone tree for us. If you would like to be one of the people who phones a few other folks regularly to see how they're doing, please email or call me or call the church office. Most of all, please stay in touch. Don't isolate yourselves. This is a time when none of us can predict how long or how intensely that we will need to self-quarantine. We need one another during this time of physical isolation. So let's get creative about ways to stay in touch. And remember, now's the time to call each other, not just email or text. One of the things that we've added to our ways of connecting as a community is Monday musings. The goal of this is to help us connect in a new way. We're all seeking inspiration for how to best deal with this period of time. So send me the readings, poems, quotes that offer you support. A bit of humor is great also. And please share with us the joys and concerns that are pressing on your heart and mind. So now I invite us to be present in this time and space, in whatever space you're in. Let's take a couple of deep, cleansing breaths, breathing in the peace of the earth, breathing out love and compassion, breathing in, breathing out. Our opening words are from Holley Ulbrich. We gather in worship in challenging times and in new and different ways. Even as we seek to protect our health and the health of the larger community, we miss the opportunity to touch, to see, to hear, to celebrate, to share our sorrows and losses in a shared space. May we be mindful of community, what it asks of us and what it gives to us. Mindful especially of those suffering from illness, those isolated or unable to access the services they need, and most of all, the companionship they seek. Let us be grateful that we can at least see and hear in the safety of our homes, and look forward to the opportunity to be together again. In our gratitude, may each of us find some way in the coming days to reach out to those who need our help and support. I invite Holley to come up to light the chalice of our community and of our faith as we share our affirmation. We gather together in a spirit of love with justice as our guide. This is our chosen covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth with freedom, and to care for one another. I want to hold up some of our cares and concerns today that people have emailed or called in. Elaine Faithful shares her sorrow at the death of longtime friend and Columbia UU member, the former South Carolina State Senator Tom Turnipseed. And Elaine also shares her gratitude that her niece and great-nephew are alive. They sheltered in the one corner of their house in Nashville that was not destroyed by a tornado. So even as she's grateful and joyous that they are still among the living, she's concerned about what her niece and so many other people will do to rebuild their lives. I got a call today from Paula and Jorge. They are still in Mexico. They're safe and happy with Jorge's family, and they have decided that the safest thing for them health-wise is to stay in place with Jorge's family because of the difficulty of returning to Clemson via 2 long bus rides and 2 airports. Paula said she would love to talk with people. You can give her a call. Her cell phone works in Mexico. She also checks emails every couple of days and likes to text. So please keep them in your thoughts and prayers. And of course, today, more than anything, we share together our concern for all those who are suffering physically, emotionally, and psychologically from COVID-19. And we're grateful for all those people on the front lines of caring for our nation. Medical staff, emergency staff, those working in service industries that help our society continue to function. We hold up also those who no longer have income or food. May each of us seek to find ways to be a caring support in any way that we might. So I invite us to just take a few moments of silent prayer and meditation to hold up the joys and mainly today concerns that we've shared, and also hold that which is in your heart. Spirit of life that flows through all that is living, that is a part of the creation that is always changing, evolving, bringing forth new wonders and mysteries. We are humbled today by our sudden vulnerability, by the amount of suffering that we see caused by this virus. May we use this, even as we are anxious and worried, as an opportunity to observe our lives, to go inside, to better understand the feelings, the emotions that well up in us, so that we might find better ways to be comfortable in our skins and in our lives. May we make the time to nurture relationships, to be in touch, to ask for what we need when we're lonely or way too anxious. May we take the time to be with friends and family in the ways that we can be physically, but also may we be with our families in ways that recreate or create deeper connections and bonds. We are grateful in the midst of all the suffering. We are grateful for life, for the beauty of the earth, for the wonder of this spring that is unfolding all around us. It reminds us of how interconnected we are. We are so grateful, even as we worry and are anxious. Blessed be. Amen.
sermon you would have heard last week if we had met. It's called The Curious Courtship of the Nerd and the Wallflower. And maybe it's a good time for a sermon that's a little on the light side. From Taoism, we get the circle of equal and interlocking black and white half circles, the masculine yang, the feminine yin. They're complementary opposites like sun and moon, light and dark. Some marriages are like that. This is a Western story of yin and yang and an odd couple. Most traditional romantic stories or fairy tales feature a handsome, dashing, very masculine suitor and a beautiful, charming, deferential young lady. They fall in love at first sight, he pursues her, and they get married and live happily ever after. Cinderella in Prince Charming, Snow White in The Nameless Prince, Romeo and Juliet without the happily ever after part, the dark, handsome, and wealthy Darcy and the lovely but impoverished Elizabeth Bennet in Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. This is not that kind of story. It's about a couple of misfits in 20th century American culture and how they came to get married and live bumpily ever after. We'll cast them as male and female for the sake of story because they fit our cultural stereotypes of men and women. In any case, while they ultimately tied the knot, the rest of the story is not material for Jane Austen, Shakespeare, or Harlequin romances. The guy was a nerd. I am puzzled by people who criticize my use of the term nerd. I think of it as a compliment. I like to think I am one. Someone told at home in the world of ideas, often at the expense of physical reality. My son-in-law Joe explained that the difference between a geek and a nerd is that a nerd is a geek with at least some social skills. I have always found that comforting. In this case, the misfit wasn't just a nerd. He was also a loner with only a limited need for companionship of any kind and only with those who shared his view of the world. He had gradually cut ties with his extended family, but he did want to carry on his DNA. For that, he needed a partner, preferably with money, because while his community of people like him was growing, they didn't have two nickels to rub together, and if they did, they had other uses for their money. But he couldn't find a girl that he could live with who was willing to take him on. The Wallflower came from a large family that had been shrinking over the generations as the young folks married and moved away. Wallflower is an old-fashioned term for a girl who has trouble finding dates. For those of you not old enough to know the term, it means she's left standing by the wall because nobody has asked her to dance. They were an odd pair. He was all logic and reason, she was all caring and compassion. He didn't believe in God, she did. He read history, economics, science. She read fiction and poetry. He liked documentaries. She liked romantic movies. Individualism was one of his highest values. Community was hers. But eventually they found common ground. Rejection, ostracism, and hostility from others who didn't see the world the same way as either of them strengthened their relationship as they huddled together in a hostile world. They gradually discovered the richness of yin and yang, of both and instead of either or. Their extended families had a lot of doubts about the prospect of marriage, especially her family, which is smaller and had some money. They thought he was marrying her for her money, and she would get swallowed up in the relationship, and it would all go his way. But the marriage took place anyway in June 1961. At first it did seem like it was his way, but somehow, over time, love and compassion, inclusion and respect, myth and story developed a peaceful coexistence with reason, calculation, and facts. About 10 years after the wedding, an elderly relative left him some oil and gas leases that generated a lot of money, and having some cash enabled them to find a way of being in a world that more or less satisfied both of them. The elderly relatives came around. A bunch of children, most of them hard-headed like their father, came into the world and grew up. Their family gatherings gradually became less like debates or shouting matches, interspersed with occasional calm periods of classical music, and more like communities that shared their stories and worked together. The nerdy guy had other strands in his DNA that helped to make this rocky marriage work. Some of his ancestors were transcendentalists with a rich appreciation of the natural world and the mysticism of Eastern religion. These ancestors also had a strong social justice streak and a lot of emphasis on educating the whole child because they wanted this richer and more meaningful way of life to be available to everyone. More recently, many members of his family have turned very humanist. So the battle over a way to view the world was not just with his bride and her family, but also within his own family. That transcendentalist strand emerged in some of their children not long after the marriage in the 1960s, because it combined well with their mother's openness and inclusivity that came from her caring and compassionate side. Like the transcendentalists, these flower children were pro-earth and anti-war. She too had rich Christian intellectual traditions on her side of the family, particularly those who insisted that heart and mind both had to be included in how they experienced the world. Step by step, they found their way. Over time, the two persuaded their respective families that the other person could be acclimated to the world of the other's kinfolk. The group is, of course, the Unitarians. Their roots stretch back to post-medieval Europe, but in this country they trace their ancestry to dissident liberal Christians who left the New England Congregational Church early in the 19th century. They proclaimed their faith in freedom, reason, and tolerance as core values, believed in, at most, one God, and put their trust in science and progress, had wisdom, derived by observation, gathering facts, debate, logical reasoning. The Universalist bride, whose faith tradition was also known as the No-Hell Church, was rejected by potential suitors on both sides. The Congregational Church blew her off for not being Christian enough. The Unitarians thought she was softening Christianity. Universalism had been one of the largest Christian denominations in the 19th century, but continued to shrink as the more liberal Christian churches rejected the idea of Christian exclusiveness and embraced universal salvation. The Universalists too brought wisdom, but it was a wisdom of the heart, or at least of the right side of the brain. The hard-headed children were the fellowships, like ours, born before, during, and after the courtship and marriage. Most of them came into being during the merger, and they acted like stepchildren, often toward their Universalist stepmother. Their membership was heavily humanist, intellectual, and individualist. Their services in the 1950s and 1960s were described, like the groom's family gatherings, as a lecture accompanied by classical music. In my experience of Unitarian fellowships in the 1960s and again in the 1990s, along with my research on the fellowship movement, I would add that these gatherings of Unitarians and lay-led fellowships also involved a lot of heated arguments. The bequests from the rich relative, oil and gas leases in East Germany, were left to a congregation on Long Island by the elderly widow of a geologist named Veach, who was shared with the UUA and has funded many projects, new churches, social justice work, and other endeavors. Universalists had a history of being more generous than Unitarians to their congregations' requests for money. Over time, the merged movements have developed a middling sort of money culture that has more sense of community obligation, but we still lag behind other faith traditions in financial support despite our relatively high average incomes. The evolution of these two faith traditions from their respective Christian parents had taken different but predictable paths. The Unitarians split with the Congregationalists, not only over the Trinity, but also a whole lot of negative theology like Jesus died for our sins, original sin, and Christianity is the only way to salvation. They walked out, often taking the building and most of the membership with them. Over time, their path continued to diverge from their Christian history. The Universalists took a more gradual path. They disputed some theological ideas, but stayed within the Christian fold, aligning themselves with more progressive churches. Theirs was a religion of affirmation, of hope, of a loving God, who would not condemn any of his children to hell, and would not sacrifice his own son as a price for making peace with humanity. If all humanity will be saved, then Universalists also became more open to non-Christian religions as alternative paths, giving broader meaning to universal salvation. Decades of cooperation in religious education, social justice work, and pulpit exchange during their long courtship eventually culminated in the merger 59 years ago. The freewheeling Ring was resistant to formal agreement, confident in his ability to control the way things went. But he had reckoned without the strong women that came with the Universalist tradition, which had been ordaining women long before the Unitarians. Universalists had a rather open-ended statement of their faith called the Winchester Profession. It was created because the New Hampshire government said that the Universalists were really Congregationalists and should therefore pay taxes to support Congregational churches. They didn't like that idea. So they said, this is how we're different from Congregationalists. It's called the Liberty Clause. So they stated their faith, and then they said, yeah, while we as an association adopt a general profession of belief and plan of church government, we leave it to the several churches and societies or to smaller associations of churches, if such should be formed within the limits of our general association, to continue or adopt within themselves such more particular articles of faith or modes of discipline as may appear to them best under their particular circumstances, provided they do not disagree with our general profession and plan. Translation. Well, yeah, this is what we believe, but it's open to interpretation, and you don't have to believe exactly anything in particular. You don't have to necessarily subscribe to the Apostles' Creed. It was the Liberty Cause that made the marriage possible, but a prenuptial agreement was still in order. So here is what they said when they took their marriage vows. In accordance with these corporate purposes, the members of the Unitarian Universalist Association, dedicated to the principles of a free faith, unite in seeking to strengthen one another in a free and disciplined search for truth as the foundation of our religious fellowship, to cherish and spread the universal truths taught by the great prophets and teachers of humanity in every age and tradition, immemorially summarized in the Judeo-Christian heritage as love to God and love to man. To affirm, defend, and promote the supreme worth of every human personality, the dignity of man, and the use of the democratic method in human relationships. To implement our vision of one world by striving for a world community founded on ideals of brotherhood, justice, and peace. To serve the needs of member churches and fellowships, to organize new churches and fellowships, and to extend and strengthen local religion, and to encourage cooperation with men of goodwill in every land. In other words, it sounds a lot like some of the principles. Well, over time, marriage covenants evolved, sometimes informally, sometimes by renegotiation. By 1979, UUA President Reverend Eugene Pickett said we needed to address, quote, the deeper malaise that lies in our confusion as to what word we have to spread. The old watchwords of the Unitarians, freedom, reason, and tolerance, do not fire the imagination of the contemporary world. They describe a process for approaching the religious depths, but they testify to no intimate acquaintance with the depths themselves. If we are ever to speak to a new age, we must supplement our seeking with some profound religious truths. End quote. The response to that challenge was led by the women of the UUA, who created the 1985 Expanded Statement of Principles and Sources. With a few later modifications, that still defines us as a religious community, a tempestuous marriage of humanists, atheists, liberal Christians, Jews, Latter-day Transcendentalists, tree huggers, pagans, and a sprinkling of others. A good marriage is a welcoming one, a loving home that affirms what the partners and their children hold in common, but offers radical hospitality to others, even if the others don't reciprocate. No, they didn't live happily ever after. Neither did the Prince and Cinderella, or Romeo and Juliet, or Ferdinand and Isabella, or Antony and Cleopatra. But they did stay married, and they both adjusted their behavior because they knew they needed each other. And they knew that their lives would be better and richer if they were willing to do what all of us have to do when and if we choose to stay married. As we approach the 60th wedding anniversary of our two ancestral faith traditions, may we give thanks for these two families who cast their fortunes with each other for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, all of which happened. And may each of us as congregations and individual members of this extended family renew our own commitment to making it work for us, for one another, and for the larger world that our faith tradition is called to serve. Amen. May it be so.
Thank you, Holley. I often, particularly in these times or when I'm under stress, I return to a short blessing in our hymnal. I repeat it often because it reminds me that I am connected to our community and to so many beloved family members and friends. Now is the time to remember our connections and to deepen them. Be safe out there and take care of yourselves. In the words of Wayne Arneson, take courage, friends. The way is often hard. The path is never clear. The stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down there is another truth. You are not alone. Blessed